تكونوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون إن الصفا والمروة من شعائر الله فمن حج البيت أو اعتمر فلا جناح عليه فمن حج البيت أو اعتمر فلا جناح عليه أن يطوف بهم ومن تطوع خيرا فإن الله شاكر عليم صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you very much, Brother Muhammad Ali, for the beautiful recitation. Just before we continue with the Marcia, just a few house rules. Please make sure that your shoes are in a blue carrier bag. If they're not already, we don't want them lying around, near the entrance and the exit, just due to health and safety and whatnot. Please make sure if you're, there sitting in the main congregation, as best as you can, particularly if you're an adult, please do try and keep your face covering on. Obviously, for those that are coming up here to recite or speak, then that's no issue, inshallah. So just in terms of a couple of other things, the washrooms are towards my left, so your right. So the gents, if you want to use the washroom during the program, so you don't go through the ladies' side, please go out through that door on your left, and you'll need to come around. And then there are gents and ladies, and I think there is a disabled washroom as well. Obviously, ladies, you can just go straight through as well, inshallah. If I could ask just everyone, there's big gaps in the front. Just maybe try and come a little bit further forward. So that then those that are joining, they can easily, file in through the back, inshallah. But Muhammad wa Muhammad salawat. Let's have another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you very much. So once again, on behalf of the I'd like to thank you all for attending today's Majlis in commemoration of the tragedy of Karbala. And as you know, over these past couple of days, we've also been commemorating the Shahadat of our fourth Imam Zayn al-Abideen, alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil. So in terms of the program for today, we're going to proceed in a couple of minutes with the recitation of Salaam and Marcia. And then, inshallah, we're going to have a majlis by Sheikh Muhammad Al-Hilli. There will then be, inshallah, Markham. We'll end with Ziyarah. And inshallah, we'll aim to close at about 7:30. And there will be takeaway niyaz that is provided. So I'll mention this again at the end. But just on your way out, you'll be given a bag with niyaz, inshallah. And obviously, if you've got any questions, or that there is something, I'm sure many of you now have been to, Al-Muntazir network programs, and a bit later I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But if you do have any issues, you need something, you're not sure where to go, etc., you need some guidance, just look out for one of our volunteers, inshallah. There are, Sister Israr, Sister Nasheed, Sister Sakina on the lady side. From the gents, it's myself, Brother Ali, Brother Asad, and Sayyid Miran Shah as well. Inshallah. And so without further ado, continue inshallah with the recitation of Marcia. Go ahead. Al-Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu
Shahi Mardan, Shay Yazdan Kuwate, Sawarika, Nigala Fata, Illa Aliyah, Sefella, Zelfekala Fata, Illa Aliyah, Sefella, Zelfekala, Jesha Koi Kunai, Pakate, नहीं जिस तरह को ये रसूल अल्लाह का सर नहीं एक है दुनिया में लेकर दूसरा है डर नहीं मिस्र है जो ये किसी की دیکھ میں جو ہر نہیں ابتلا لائی خدائی ابتلا گر سوار لا فتح الا علینا سیف اللہ ذوالفقار لا فتح الا علینا سیف اللہ ذوالفقار کہتے تھے محمد مادر غم قارتے ابتحانم میں کریں گے لشکر کفار سے سب ہمیں تسبیح دیں گے جا کر تیار بچ جا پائے گا کوئی نہ ہمارے واسطے کہہ دیں گے غازی ہم بدر نہ ہونے کا لا فتح الا علینا سیف اللہ ذوالفقار لا فتح الا علینا سیف اللہ ذوالفقار محمد وعلى محمد صلوات
پر محمد وعلى محمد صلوات. First of all, I would like to thank my teacher, Brother Misa Mali Mehdi, who has taught me this, and may Allah bless him, and for him, please can we recite Allah Salawat. رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی یوں مرضیوں میں ہے برتر یوں مرضیوں میں ہے برتر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی کبھی علی کی غلامی سے لازوال بنے کبھی کلام الہی میں وہ کلام کرے بنائے فضا و قمر بنائے فضا و قمر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی خزاں اسی کی سبب ہے بہار ہے اس سے نظام گردش لے لو نہار ہے اس سے چلائے چاکی کا چکر چلائے چاکی کا چکر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی جب آیا فرش پہ ترسی لیے لباس جنا زمین والوں پہ تب کھل گیا یہ راز نہا فلک پہ بھی ہے مقرر فلک پہ بھی ہے مقرر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق بطول کی مرضی محاذ جنگ پہ ہر وقت فتح یابی کا جو ان سے پوچھو گے ہر راز کامیابی کا کہیں گے فاتح خیبر کہیں گے فاتح خیبر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی اگر وہ چاک خود راضیہ بھی راضی ہو غم حسین میں آنسو بہا کے تم لے لو آزا کے فرش پہ آ کر آزا کے فرش پہ آ کر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی عطا نہ ہوتا تمہیں سم کہاں تھا باس میں تیرے کلام مرضی زہرا لکھ دیا تو نے ہوا ہے صرف یہ پا کر ہوا ہے صرف یہ پا کر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی رضائے خالق اکبر بطول کی مرضی پر محمد والے محمد صلوات
پر محمد والے محمد صلوات. I'd now like to welcome Brother Misam Ali Mehdi. We just had one of his kalams, but inshallah he'll be reciting a few more, inshallah. Thank you very much, Misam, for joining us. Let's please recite another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Take it through Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Go through Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Mawla Salamat Rakhia Mustafa for Mawla bless his father for his efforts, for the love he has for reciting for the Ahmadiyya and for the rest of the children who are participating in the academy. So for the well-being, please kindly recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali کوشش کروں گا اپنے وقت میں اختتام کروں اپنی ڈیوٹی کا ایک سلام کے چند اشعار آنسو کے حوالے سے اس کے بعد مسائل کے یا مسائل کی چند اشعار اختصار کے ساتھ پیش کروں گا. یہ جو آپ سب آنسو بہاتے ہیں ماہ عذاب جاج و ساری ہے آپ سب جو آنسو بہاتے ہیں ان کی فضیلت ان کا مرتبہ ان سے کیا ملتا ہے ہمیں چند اشعار میں ملازم فرمائی میں پیش کرتا ہوں. کربلا والوں پہ جب میں نے بہائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ جب میں نے بہائے آنسو تو اپنے رومال میں زہرا نے بچائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ آ گئی فاطمہ زہرا مجھے لینے کے لیے آ گئی فاطمہ زہرا مجھے لینے کے لیے آئی فوراً یہ ٹپکتے ہی صدائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ. شعر کو تھوڑے پاس دیکھیے گا اہل ذوق کا کافی نظر شیئر کر رہا ہوں کہ حر کی منزل پہ وہ جا پہنچے ہیں ہجرت کر کے آنسو ذہن میں رکھیے حر کی منزل پہ وہ جا پہنچے ہیں ہجرت کر کے ایک مدت سے جو آنکھوں میں سمائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ اور بعد مرنے کے غم شہر نہیں مرنے دیتا بعد مرنے کے غم شہر نہیں مرنے دیتا میری تربت سے جو آتی ہے ضیائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ. اور ہم سبھی گناہگار ہیں خطاکار ہیں ہمارا کئی کچھ چیزیں ہوں گی جو ہماری بخشش کا ذریعہ بنے گی ان میں سے ایک چیز جو ہے میں بیان کرنے جا رہا ہوں شاید کسی لائق ہو حشر میں پوچھا گیا لائے ہو کیا آزاد نجات حشر میں پوچھا گیا لائے ہو کیا آزاد نجات میں یہ بولا کہ نہیں کچھ بھی سوائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ. اور بہلول دانا کے بارے میں آپ سب جانتے ہیں مٹی کے گھر وہ بیچا کرتے تھے شعر بطور خاص دیکھیے گا تجھ سے سودا میرا بہلول نہیں ہو سکتا تجھ سے سودا میرا بہلول نہیں ہو سکتا اور تیری جنت کہاں کافی ہے برائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ یا مسلح پہ ہو یا چاہے سر فرش ازا یا مسلح پہ ہو یا چاہے سر فرش ازا ایک گناہ گار کو خالق سے ملائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ چشم سجاد سے بہ بہ کے لہو کی صورت چشم سجاد سے بہ بہ کے لہو کی صورت اپنے دکھ درد کی روداد سنائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ. میں وقت کا شعر پیش کر رہا ہوں. خاص دعا کا طلبگار ہوں. شاید ایک نئی بات ہو. ہر چیز کی، ہر عمل کی، ہر نیک کام کی ایک جزا ہوتی ہے. تو اب مولا حسین پر آنسو بہانے کی کیا بھلا جزا ہو سکتی ہے؟ میں پیش کر رہا ہوں اس سے بڑی جزا، اس سے بڑی اس کا سب سے بڑی جزا جو میرے ذہن میں پیش کر رہا ہوں، شاید کسی لائق ہو کہ شہ پہ رونے کا صلہ مجھ کو ملا یوں میسم شہ پہ رونے کا صلہ مجھ کو ملا یوں میسم رب نے آنکھوں کو میری پھر سے دلائے آنسو کربلا والوں پہ. اور محمد والے محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. بس میرے کچھ منٹ رہتے ہیں وقت میں صرف اور صرف چند اشعار ذکر مسائل کے پیش کروں گا بطور دوسرا مولا سجاد کی بارگاہ میں. کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے. کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے. اولاد مصطفیٰ کی غیروں میں پیدا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے. کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے. معصومہ کے تماچے گالوں پہ لگ رہے ہیں بھائی نہ جانے کیسے مجبور رسیوں میں منظر یہ دیکھتا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے. کرتی تھی فکر زینب کیسا ہے وقت آیا عابد کی بے کسی پر اہل حرم کی جانب نظریں اٹھا اٹھا کے ہر کوئی دیکھتا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے بابا کا سر تو تیرا ضربوں سے کٹ گیا تھا پر شہر شام آ کر بیٹے کے دل پہ خنجر ہر وقت چل رہا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے. اگر شعر سخت بولے مجھے معاف کیجیے گا. کوفے کی شاہزادی بلوے میں بیردہ ہے منظر یہ دیکھتے ہی نیزے کی نوک سے سر غازی کا گر گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے غیرت کے ناخدا پر اور اس سے بڑھ کے کوئی کیا ہوگی اب قیامت سیدانیوں کی خاطر دربار سج رہا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے کرتی تھی فکر زینب بھائی سے اس نے وعدہ کچھ اس طرح نبھایا بعد حسین بھی سن زینب نے سوچ کر یہ ہر زخم سہ لیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے کرتی تھی فکر زینب بازار آ گیا ہے سجاد مر نہ جائے اور محمد والے محمد صلوات
Sense brothers and Jazakallah khair. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat.
جب دفن کرنے آئے جب دفن کرنے آئے تلے پاش پاش کو عابد پکارے دیکھ کے غازی کی لاش کو چچا میں آپ کی تربت بنانے آیا چچا میں آپ کی
پر بنانے آیا ہوں سکینہ پہ بھی ہے پیاسی بتانے آیا ہوں چچا میں آپ کی تربت بنانے آیا ہوں بتاؤں کیسے چچا کیا گزر گئی ہم پر ہر ایک شہر میں مارے گئے ہمیں پتھر تھی مائیں پھوپیا میرے ساتھ اے علی کے پسر یہ سارے ظلم کے قصے سنانے آیا ہوں چچا میں آپ کی تربت بنانے آیا ہوں سکینہ راہ میں ناکے سے گر گئی تھی ابھی وہی ہے تازہ روایت قمر پہ لکھی ہوئی ہے جاری خون جو اس وقت سے میری لئی سکھا کے ابھی تازیہ لے آیا ہوں بنانے آیا تمہارے سامنے آتی ہے شرم کہتے ہوئے یہ بات کرتا بھلا کیسے سامنے ان کے ابھی ہے دور یہاں سے بنی اسد والے پھوپھی کی چلے گئی چادر بتانے آیا ہوں چچا میں آپ کی تربت بنانے آیا لین بچی کے گوہر کو ایسے چھینا تھا گری زمین پہ سکینہ میں خون روتا تھا وہ جس زمین پہ کانوں سے خون ٹپکا تھا وہ خاک رکھنے تمہارے سرحانے آیا ہوں چچا میں آپ کی تربت بنانے آیا بغیر ان کے تم اترے تھے زین سے کیسے حرم تو لٹے ये बाजू कट गए जब से पड़े थे दूर के लाशे से आपके कब से कटे ये बाजू कटे ये बाजू बदन से मिलाने आया हूँ चर्चा में आपकी तुरवा बनाने आया हूँ चर्चा में आपकी तुरवा बनाने आया سورة المباركة الفاتحة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Dear Sheikh, Salaam Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and travel here to join us for today's Majlis. And once again, thank you to all of you that have taken time out of your weekend to come and commemorate the Shahadat of our holy fourth Imam, Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala. I can see, the last half an hour, 40 minutes since I last mentioned a few things, that there have been, mashallah, many more people that have come in. So just to reiterate a few things, please make sure that your shoes are placed in the blue carrier bags provided. Please don't keep them, near the entrance or exit or anywhere like that, because it's a health and safety hazard. In terms of the washrooms, so for the ladies, it's directly to your right. For the gents, you'll need to go out of the door to your left, so where I'm pointing to my right, and you'll need to go around the building and come in through the main entrance, through that side. So across from the tennis courts, the gents and the ladies' bathrooms are both there. There's also disabled facilities as well if you need it. So just a few things that need to be mentioned today that are very, very important. So firstly, to those of you that maybe haven't been to our events before, whether online or in person, so we run, alhamdulillah, some of us here, based in the Surrey, South London area, run an organization called Al-Muntazir network, which, as you can tell by the name, was opened up last year in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Allahumma salli ala. And the main purpose of the organization is to provide a unique, family-oriented, different way for us to align ourselves and our families and our community with the teachings of the Imam of our time, and ultimately to lay the groundwork for his reward, inshallah. And so as you can see here, I'm not going to go through all of them, because you can see here, there are a dozen projects, and that's not even exhaustive. But you can go to our website, al-Muntazir.net, and we've got many of these flagship projects. Just very briefly, Al-Muntazir Network, Manqabat and Noha Academy, Al-Muntazir Network STEM Club, Al-Muntazir Network Young Azadari Program, AMN Politics Club, AMN Donation Drive, AMN Library, AMN Quran Stories, AMN Picnics, AMN Quran Recitation in Ramadan, AMN Lions, which is something, inshallah, football club we're hoping to open, inshallah. So once again, we're run entirely by volunteers. We're a non-profit organization. And I'd like to thank all of those today. There were, mashallah, quite a few of us that, came here. We were here at 4 o'clock or even before, setting up the chairs, the stage. So thank you to all of you that have supported to, make today's event possible. We received some very, very generous contributions and sponsorships in order to cover the cost of today's program as well. So inshallah, may Allah reward all of you. May He bless you and your families and all of your Mahmoumeen. And on that note, I'd like to please read out a few names. So there is a request for Surah Al-Fatiha. So firstly, Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Sa'id al-Hakim, who passed away yesterday in Najaf. Sheikh Muhammad Zaki, Sayyid Ali Sadiq Naqvi, Ibn Muhammad Naqvi, Sayyid Liaqat Hussain, Shahid Ali Zaidi ibn Wajid Ali Zaidi, Sayyida Zahir Fatima, Sayyida Nasim Fatima, Sayyid Mujahid Shah, Sayyid Nasir Hussain bin Brahmi, Sayyid Ehsan Ahmed bin Brahmi, Manzoor Fatima, Rajab Ali Ukra, Ukiyabai Ukra, Saliha Banu Shirazi, Muhammad Ali Haji Ismail, Hassan Ali Nasir Jagani, Zaybun Nisa, Aziz Fatima, Shakila Salman, Sayyid Salman Raza, Khadim Ali, Mr. and Mrs. Sheikh Ali Hussain, Mr. and Mrs. Sheikh Shawkat Ali, Sheikh Bashir Hussain, Sheikh Muhammad Raza, Sheikh Talib Hussain, and all of the marhumeens of everyone present today, and all of our marhumeens that maybe we've lost during these trying circumstances this past year, and also for all of those that have lost their lives in the conflicts in Afghanistan, in Yemen, Palestine, in Iraq, and elsewhere. Let's please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for the blessing of their souls, please. Could we also please recite the Shifa 5 times for Brother Haider, who is facing a severe skin problem, for all of those that are unwell and suffering, especially for the people of Afghanistan, many of whom have been displaced, have lost family members, of all ages, from, we've seen young children to old, elderly people that have either been injured or they've passed away. So we pray on behalf of Imam Zayn al-Abideen that all of those that are unwell, that Allah grants them shifa. So let's recite the famous ayah 5 times, please. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. And those of you on the Gen side would have seen we've got a very large flag that is just in the back corner, and that is the flag from the top of the dome of Imam Hussain in Karbala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We do have a red one as well, which we'll pass around to the ladies' side at the end. We try to put it up, but it's so large that we couldn't actually really find anywhere to put it without, blocking the view of those of you sitting inside. So we do have another one. Inshallah, we will pass that around at the end, or we will hold it up. You can perform your ziyarat, but just because of COVID guidelines and precautions, we would ask that people don't touch or kiss the flag, just because if obviously multiple people are doing it, then it can be a bit of an issue, unfortunately. But inshallah, towards the end, we'll have the recitation of the Ashura. We will open up the flag, and then you can all come and pay your respects to it, but inshallah from a distance, so that we do that as safely as possible. Inshallah, just bear with me just for a few more minutes. Just want to make a few more announcements. So inshallah, on Sunday the 3rd of October, the 41st annual Al-Abideen demonstration will be taking place, starting at 12 noon until 5:30 p.m. And as with every year, the starting point will be Marble Arch, and they're always looking for volunteers to register and to support on the day. So to do so, please visit www.albahrainuk.org/volunteers in order to take part. Just in terms of some of the initiatives that Al-Muntazir network have been taking during this holy month, of course, we've all gathered today in order to hold this Majlis al-Azhar. Inshallah, we're going to be having a children's Muharram workshop, which will be taking place on Sunday, the 19th of September. And inshallah, on that day, we'll be joined by Brother Abbas Bashuri. And we're going to be spending the day with the children to give them the opportunity to explore the events of Karbala in a more creative and unique way through things like art, role plays, poetry. And that's really what I think we endeavor to do here at AMN in order to raise the children, of I guess the generation perhaps below mine or 2 generations below that, will inshallah be able to be the leaders of the community tomorrow, inshallah. So that's on the 19th of September, which is 2 Sundays. And one very important and very, very, humbling project is something that is being jointly run by Imam Zamana Trust and Al-Muntazir Network. So in terms of Imam Zamana Trust, we're a registered charity that are based here in the UK, but we intend to serve mu'mineen that are living all around the world. So at the moment, so currently and in the past, we've had projects to support people in Iraq, in Syria, especially in the Zayn area, in the Muharram in Damascus, in Tanzania, in India, and in Pakistan. And alhamdulillah, with the various projects, the list keeps on growing. Another project that we've got at the moment is the construction of the Bab al-Ilm school in Najaf, which is for the children of the students at the Al-Hilli in Najaf, that will allow them to, inshallah, get a good education in comfortable conditions as well. And the collaborative project that will be taking place between Al-Muntazir Network and Imam Zamana Trust, inshallah, is a sponsored children's walk in honor of Bibi Sakina Salaam Alaykum and all of the orphans of Karbala. So inshallah, we're going to be walking from Hayder Islamic Center in Stratford to Idara Jafariya in Tooting, and we intend to complete a round trip, which is 3 miles. And so basically, children of any age, whether 5, 6 years old, even adults, parents, you're all welcome to take part. And all it is that each child will need to be accompanied by at least one adult, so a parent or a guardian or an older sibling. Inshallah, we're going to be meeting on the 25th of September in order to perform this walk, inshallah. And we're trying to collect funds, and each child will, inshallah, be able to seek out sponsors in order to raise funds, especially for the projects that we're holding for orphans in countries such as Iraq, where maybe the orphans that unfortunately have come about as a result of conflict don't have the adequate schooling, housing, shelter, and just this general, I guess, quality of life. So that's inshallah what we're aiming to provide them. And so, as I said, all proceeds will be going towards Imam Zamana Trust, but we thank Al-Muntazir Network, and mashallah, you can see how many young children we've got here in the crowd. So all of you kids that can see me now, I know you can all see me. We're not all on Zoom where maybe, I'm on mute, but you can't see my camera, whatever. You guys, kids, go home and tell your parents today that I want to sign up and I want to walk on the 25th of September, inshallah. Inshallah, Allah will reward you. This is on the 17th of Safar, so just 2 or 3 days before the Arba'een of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And inshallah, very soon, over this weekend, we're going to circulate the sponsorship link, and we would of course encourage you, even if you don't have children of that age, you're not taking part, to please sponsor the children and donate towards this beautiful cause. Inshallah, if you want to register your child to walk or your families as a whole, then please get in touch with me. You'll find my numbers on the Al-Muntazir Network group chat, or you can come and speak to me at the end. And just very quickly, at the end, we're going to have takeaway niyas, inshallah. So those will be provided to you at the exit on the way out. And we're also going to be providing 2 books per family, which you can collect. So the first one is Diwan Abu Talib alayhi salam, a collection of verses or speeches by Hazrat Abu Talib alayhi salam. And the second one is 100 pearls advice from Grand Ayatollah Sayyid al-Sistani. So inshallah, we'll be providing those at the end. Please do make sure that you do grab a hold of those with your niyas, inshallah. So I think you've probably heard enough from me. Once again, thank you very much to Sheikh Muhammed Al-Hilli for honoring us with your presence today. We'd like to welcome Sheikh to the stage with an salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونستعين به ونتوكل عليه، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وخاتم الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين، سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. السلام عليك سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وإذا مرضت فهو يشفين. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, the acceptance of the deeds, and for the hastening of the reappearance of بقية الله الأعظم, روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. Enlighten your souls, purify your hearts and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected elders, sisters and brothers, Salaam Alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. What was the illness of the holy fourth Imam, Zayn al-Abideen al-Sajjad, salawatullahi wa salam alayhi? Did he fight on the 10th of Muharram? When did he become sick? When was he cured? And importantly, why did he become sick? And what are the important lessons to be learned into our lives and the theological and the spiritual applications into our lives today? The subject of the illness and the marad of the holy fourth Imam, Sayyid al-Sajideen, Zayn al-Abideen, Ali ibn al-Husayn, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, is an important area in the study of the biography of the holy fourth Imam. Without a shadow of a doubt, there is a special place when it comes to Imam Zayn al-Abideen in our hearts. Each and every one of us considers him to be the representative of Allah, the individual who guides mankind, an individual who witnessed so many calamities, hardships, yet stood firm, yet stood indeed resilient. He was patient, he was eloquent, he was courageous. There is no doubt that each and every one of us respects and honors Imam Zayn al-Abideen. But I ask you this question, after so many majalis, so many discussions around the life of the Imam, if there is today a question to be asked to the respected brothers and sisters here today, and those watching, and those who will watch later, what was the sickness of the Imam on the 10th of Muharram? Many will not be able to answer. They say, you know what? We've heard that he's ill, but other than this, we have no idea. In the recognition that there are some important aspects historically that you and I must be aware of. But very importantly, these aspects are not historical. You'll see in the discussion today how relevant it is for you and I to be aware of the details of the illness of the fourth Imam. Because I guarantee you, the moment we finish the Majlis, there are aspects that will impact and affect your life. There is no doubt about that. Because when we look at these areas, there are all these questions that sometimes people have regarding the character and the personality of the holy fourth Imam, peace and blessings be upon him. How many times you and I have heard on the 10th of Muharram when famously Sayyid al-Shuhada Abu Abdullah al-Husayn salawatullahi wa salam alayhi would stand all alone on the plains of Karbala. He would see that his companions are all slaughtered. He would see that his family members have all been butchered. And he would call out the famous call, Allah, is there anyone to help us? Is there anyone to support us? The individual who then stood was whom? The Holy Fourth Imam. He says to his beloved auntie, Sayyida Zayn, peace and blessings be upon her, he says to her, give me a stick and give me a sword so that I rise. Why? So that I can answer the call of my father. At that moment, the Holy Fourth Imam alayhi salam says, no, stop him from doing so. The question of the illness of the Imam is important because there is an agenda that continues until today. You go and research the life of the fourth Imam in the books of many of our brothers in other schools, and what? Books authored by Umayyad historians. What do they tell you about the fourth Imam? They'll tell you he was somebody who was sick all his life. He was somebody who would constantly cry. He was weak. He was not someone who would arise. He was not necessarily an individual who likes confrontation. Just wanted to be quiet, somehow separate himself from the rest of the world, and he was not interested in confrontation. This is the image that's depicted by Bani Umayyah, yes? And the propaganda machine that's worked. And I tell you, without going into detail, there are those even within the school of Ahlul Bayt who are advocating the teachings of Bani Umayyah today. You'll be surprised. But when it comes to the reality today is that we have to, of course, understand the depth of the life of the Imams alayhi salam, to be able to learn from them, but to also answer misconceptions. Because I tell you, a man who was praised by Rasulullah in such a manner that the narrations tell us that the Holy Prophet of Islam would say, إِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ, on the day of Qiyamah, there is a call that will be heard amongst the nations, amongst the people who have gathered. أين زين العابدين? Where is the ornament of the worshippers? The Prophet of Islam would say, at that moment I would see my son Ali ibn al-Hussein walk in between the masses, and the people would stand, what? In honor of this son of mine. Yes, the recognition is when it comes to his eloquence in the courtyard of Yazid, and the fact that he utterly destroyed the tyrant through his courage, through his valor, the way that he represented. I tell you, someone will ask the question, what was the first majlis recited in the history of Islam? Important question, yes? What was the first majlis? In accordance with many ulama, the first majlis recited in the way you and I are accustomed to majalis, meaning Quran, Hadith, benefit for the people. That is indeed one of his great legacies, without a shadow of a doubt. He kept the message about Abdullah on the 10th of Muharram alive in the courtyard of Yazid. Then when we look at his legacy, the treatise of rights, the supplication, Sahih al-Sajjad, have you heard of this professor by the name of Professor Henry Corbin? He was an individual who was very well known in his field, philosophy and mysticism in Paris. He used to engage with Allama Tabatabai in letters, discussions, debates. Allama once wrote to him, he said to him, what is the method of your conversation with God? How do you speak to God? Because we, the Muslims, have dua. We have supplications. That is how we speak to Allah. Yes. Professor Corbin writes, the letter is still today available. He says, the way I speak to God is by reciting the words of Zayn al-Abideen in Sahih al-Sajjad. He's a Christian. This Corbin, Professor Corbin. I tell you, sometimes non-Muslims have understood the depth of what? Our Imams better than some of the Muslims. Because I tell you, when you come to people like George Jordak, when he was interviewed, George Jordak who's written The Voice of Human Justice, when he was interviewed, a Christian historian who's from Lebanon, yes? He's written his famous works. He says, you know how I got into this? I was sitting in the river next to our village, and I would think and think, and then my brother gave me a copy of Nahjul Balagha and said, read this. He said, do you know how many times I've read Nahjul Balagha in my life? This is an interview conducted before he died, George Jordan. He said, I've read Nahjul Balagha 40 times in my life. How many? Allah, you come to some of the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they haven't even read it once. Do you agree? The realization is this particular individual says, I read it 40 times. I was mesmerized by the words of Ali. He says, I went to university, came back to the same river where I read Nahjul Balagha. I began to write and write and write. And indeed, I drowned in the sea of the Fada'il of Ali ibn Abi Talib, to the extent that I authored the book, The Voice of Human Justice. He says, when I finished, I went home. The says, لا فتى إلا علي ولا سيف إلا ذو الفقار. He said, I was mesmerized. I came and I said to my family, my father, I said, look, this is the work I've done, 5 volumes. He said, don't worry, here, bring it. My village Christian, they said, we'll print it. The first copy of this book, The Voice of Human Justice, was printed by Christians. In the recognition that sometimes we have to realize that these treasures, these gems, have been discussed and discovered by other human beings, but does not absolve us from our responsibility for presenting it to others. Likewise, when you come to the Imam alayhi salam and you find his theological discussions, his debates, is there for everyone to see. Yet, the sickness and the illness of the Imam is an important subject that I would like to delve in detail today. I'd like your patience, because this area is somehow technical and academic, but I will try to link it to our lives. Why? Because there's no shadow of a doubt that today, many people are aware of illnesses and diseases more than 2 years ago. Because I tell you, yes, today COVID-19 has changed the world. It's changed you and I in many shapes and forms, whether we like it or not. In many places, it's unlikely to see anybody who today will tell you that I've not been affected by COVID. Yes, coronavirus has changed our lives. And it's an illness. There are people who have lost their faith. There are people who have lost their relatives. There are people who are questioning. There are people who have gone through so much hardship due to COVID. There are those who are suffering with other ailments and illnesses. Today, the latest statistics tell us that there are over 220 million human beings who have had COVID around the world. And over 4.5 million individuals have died as a result of COVID over the last 18 or so months. Therefore, the recognition is that illnesses and diseases have affected the lives of each and every one of us today. It is not a subject that affects only a few people. Yes, whether you're young, whether you're old, there is no one today who could come and tell me, you know what, I've never ever felt sick in my life. I've never gone through any form of illness or sickness in my life. If you have, then see me afterwards, you are someone exceptionally special. Without a shadow of a doubt, it is universal. And therefore, this area is very, very important. Let's look at these questions, but also examine Islam's viewpoint on illnesses. Why? Because I've had emails and messages from people who have said, I've had enough, I can't take this anymore. I've got cancer, God forbid. I have, for example, a particular stomach condition. I have my children who are going through a particular ailment. Why? Why is God not helping me? I've tried every single ta'weez, every dua, every salah, every ziyarah, everything, and my sickness is still there. Why? Why is Allah making me go through this? Yes, and I tell you, Sayyid Shuhada Abdullah actually predicted and would say to us in this monumental line, when he said on the way to Karbala, what would happen after Corona and at any time. You know what he said? He said, "An-nasu abidu dunya." People are slaves of this world. وَالدِّينُ لَعَةٌ عَلَىٰ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. Religion is just there on the tip of their tongue. Whenever they choose, they apply religion. Whenever they don't like it, they attack religion. فَإِذَا مُحْسُوا بِالْبَلَاءِ قَلَّتْ دَيَّانُهُ. When they're struck with hardships, those who follow faith are very few. Yes? There are those who are on edge, confused. Quran tells us, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. There are those who worship Allah through a letter. If they're struck with good things, they are happy. And if they're examined through calamities, خَسِرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. They lose this world and the akhirah. Therefore, it is of a great importance that we understand the ethos and the basis for illness within the religion of Islam. What does the Quran say about illness? What does Hadith say about illness? Which prophets were ill? What are the etiquettes of being ill? And why? Why do we become ill in the religion of Islam? But before that, let's discuss the illness of the Holy Fourth Imam. The first question is, was Imam alayhi salam engaging in a battle on the 10th of Muharram or not? You say to me, I've never heard Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salam ever being mentioned to be fighting on the day of Ashura. Is this possible? Yes. There are narrations that point to this. Let me give you those narrations. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal mentions, and this is also supported by a narration that is found in the book Manaqib by Sayyid Shahr ibn Ashur. He comes and says what? He says that the fourth Imam was given a shield, a body armor to wear. And this body armor was worn, but it was too big on him. Therefore, what he did was, he broke it to make it smaller. And because he broke it, that requires a lot of strength. People had evil eye on him. Therefore, he then subsequently became sick. So, the conclusion that is made by some historians and some of our Shia ulama, very few today, is that the fourth Imam was fighting. Because why would he need to wear a body armor? Otherwise, you wouldn't need to fight, right? Or you don't need to wear one. How do we answer this? First, it is not compatible with numerous narrations that exists in Sunni and Shia literature. For example, Sheikh al-Tusi, Sheikh al-Mufid, for example, Tabari and others that say the Imam was sick on the eve of Ashura and on the day of Ashura. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what is the source of this narration? The source of this narration is the Zaydi school of thought. Please pay attention so that you have an understanding completely of this subject. What is the Zaydi school of thought? Our brothers in Yemen and others say, they say an Imam has to fight, otherwise they will not be an Imam. That's why they choose Zayd, the son of the fourth Imam, as an Imam after him. They say he fought, he had an uprising, he was martyred. Therefore, he must be considered an Imam. Yes? That's why this Zaydi narrator said that because Imam Zayn al-Abideen was given a body armor, he must have fought. Hence we consider him as an Imam. The reply to this is our ulama say, even if we take this one narration, who is to say that this was given to him when? This was given to him on the day of Ashura. The narration doesn't say it was given to him on the day of Ashura. The question is, okay, very well. He was sick. When did he become ill? Imam Zayn al-Abideen, when did he experience illness? The narrations tell us he was fine in Medina. He was absolutely okay in Medina. On the journey to Karbala, he was fine. It is likely that his illness began when he was in Karbala. So anytime from the 2nd of Muharram till the 9th. Because narrations clearly say on the eve of Ashura, he was sick. Yes. Third important question is, when did he become cured from the illness? Because we hear in the Majlis, in the Maqtal, that Imam couldn't fight because he was ill. When did he become better? Sheikh al-Tusi, one of our great ulama, says that he became better when he returned back to Medina. Other ulama say no, he became better when he went to Sham. Irrespective, the conclusion is that he was still sick when he went to Kufa, and the likeliness is that he was still ill when he went to Sham. Now, the very important question that I'd like your attention is, what was his illness? Please pay attention to this. Do you know why this is important? Because in my humble research, I have not seen any English lecture on this. Nobody has ever spoken on this. Number one, I could be wrong. Number two, I have not seen any English literature, books on this subject. Number three, many of the majalis on this, in Arabic, Farsi, Urdu, they have not looked at it in the right way, I believe, in my humble opinion. I'll tell you why. Because there are two narrations that tell us what the illness of Imam Zayn al-Abideen was in Karbala. And this is very important for us to understand, to look at it academically. When we analyze and examine and scrutinize historical narrations, it's very important that we look at it with an objective. Yes? Now, what do they say? The first narration is from the Holy Fifth Imam, Imam Muhammed al-Baqir, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The narration says, كان أبي مبطونا يوم قتل أبي. My father was mabtoon. In Arabic, deliberately I mentioned this Arabic word because I'd like you to focus with me as I take you on a journey. Slightly technical, but you will come with a conclusion. He says, my father had a condition related to his button. Now, those who know Arabic will say that button means what? I don't know if it's the same in Urdu, but in Arabic means stomach. Yes? On that basis, because this narration is an al-Kafi and it's in al-Bihar al-Anwar, Sheikh al-Mufid, Allahu Ta'ala maqamah, one of our great scholars in his book Al-Irshad, he says, therefore, Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salam had a condition by the name of dharab, which is excessive diarrhea. Because when somebody has excessive diarrhea, they are not able to stand up. Imam alayhi salam was bedridden. Therefore, he would lose anything that he would eat or drink. And hence, consequently, he would be weak. He was not able to stand up. That is the conclusion of Sheikh al-Mufid. Many have come to the same conclusion and said, yes, Imam alayhi salam had severe diarrhea. What is the problem in the belief that Imam had severe diarrhea? Let me tell you what the problem is. In Shia theology, we have a principle. The principle is the prophets and the imams are the best. They are the sources of guidance for mankind. They are the role models. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not afflict them with any condition that deters people away from them. Please understand this. Meaning what? Meaning because they have to be the sources of inspiration for people, people need to be drawn to them. They mustn't say, I don't want to get close to them because it's got a very, contagious disease. Or the smell is not nice. Or the appearance is not good. Yes? That is not acceptable in our aqidah. Because it doesn't go with the presentation of the Prophet and an Imam as the representative of Allah, as the vice-gerent of Allah on this earth to guide and to help mankind. What is the problem in the belief that the fourth Imam had severe diarrhea? When you have, and those, may Allah help those who have had it, okay? Most of us perhaps have gone through it and the doctors can tell us more. When you have it, would you have to go constantly? Would you need constantly water? Don't you? Otherwise it's a very difficult situation, isn't it? Can you imagine being in the state of illness without water? You and I know in Karbala there's no water for a few days. And therefore, subsequently, what would be the result? The result would be that if we believe that the Imam had severe diarrhea, that would mean that he was not able to cleanse himself in the appropriate manner, and hence would be a deterrence for people. God forbid there will be a smell and all that. Someone will say, okay, so how do we then interpret the hadith of the fifth Imam? Please pay attention. The hadith of the fifth Imam says what? Abi Mabtoon. You look at Lisan al-Arab, which is a book for Arab lexicographers, which gives them the definition of Arabic terms. He says, batan means, when a condition, means either somebody who eats excessively, or somebody who has severe diarrhea, or somebody who has fever. We cannot accept that this means that the Imam was somebody who eats excessively, because there's nothing to do with an illness. So we reject that. Secondly, we have just said that having excessive or severe diarrhea cannot be accepted. Therefore, the only possible explanation of the illness of the fourth holy Imam is that he had fever. Is that he had high temperature, which prohibited him from what? Which prohibited him from rising, which prohibited him from taking part in the battle. Severe high temperature, which weakened the body. Yes? And therefore, this would be the acceptable outcome. The question, of course, that follows is why? Why should the Imam go through illness? And of course, many of us here would know why. Yes? But we don't apply in our lives. The reason that's given is by Sayyid al-Shuhada. He says to Sayyid Zaynab, hold him, so that the line of Imamat is not severed. So that, yes, the Imam continues to be present. It is the plan of Allah. It is divine intervention. He wanted Imam Zayn al-Abideen to remain alive. Therefore, it's part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's immaculate, beautiful, well-orchestrated plan to preserve Imamat. And therefore, Imam alayhi salam went through an illness. No doubt. Here, there is an important area that needs to be discussed. And that is, how does Imam look at illness? Imam Zayn al-Abideen has in Sahih al-Sajjad a dua. Dua number 15 is a dua that talks about illness. Yes? From this dua, we can analyze and examine the position of illness in the religion of Islam. It is very important to look at this. Do you know why? Because I have personally seen our mu'mineen, sisters and brothers, approach the subject of illness exactly the same as non-believers. Say to me, how? In other words, it's very painful. I know. Look, we've all gone through illness, yes? You lose, for example, the ability to do so many things. You want to go Majlis, you want to go Ziyarah, you want to go, for example, to Hajj and Umrah. You want to do your normal activities, you want to go to work, you want to visit others, you can't, you're sick. And so people have unfortunately developed this habit of doing and saying whatever others have said, and it's reflecting on our behavior. This is very, very important to point out. In a society that we live in, we Rab in the sense that not physically, but our practices and our thoughts and our way of life sometimes is impacted by those around us. So we begin to think it's okay. So we begin to apply principles that are adapted by non-believers into our own lives. Whereas we have our own set of instructions that we have to be very much aware of. And this is what I would like to remind you and I about what the religion of Islam says about illness, about diseases, about ailments. The first is what? The first is how is it tackled in the Holy Quran? Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the illness of the heart. Myocardial infarction, no. Stroke, no. Disease of the heart means the soul, means darkening of the heart. When an individual is what? Is hard-hearted. When an individual has strayed because of sins and so on. That's one area. The other area is jurisprudence. Like what? Like for example, the Quran says, وَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. The obligation of fasting. Allah says if you're sick, then you don't have to fast. For example. Yes? Because the religion of Islam is not a religion that is what? That's understood well even by its followers. I tell you, today there are followers of the religion who interpret the religion in their own way. How many times in my humble career, yes, as an individual who was a student of Islam, I've had to tell people, Akhi, Ukhti, my sister, my brother, this is not Islam. In other words, they've come with their own interpretation and applied it to Islam. In other words, they've understood ahkam, ruling of Islam, through their own upbringing, through their own environment. There are so many examples of this. Yes? Let me give you an example that happened to me only a few weeks ago. I was blessed in Muharram to be in Leicester, reciting Majlis. And I mentioned on the minbar the subject of eating food from our non-Muslim neighbors who are non-Ahlul Kitab. Yes? Those who subscribe to religions such as Hinduism and so on. And I said the ruling of our Maraja is as follows. If a Hindu friend next door presents you with a samosa, I don't know why it's always samosa, but anyway, gives you samosa, right? And there are many who post, or send me questions. Maulana, my Hindu friend gives me samosa. I've never received samosa from my Hindu neighbor. Maybe they're listening one day. So they will, yes, present, are we allowed or not? And I have seen, and people came to me and said, Maulana, you know what I do? I say, thank you so much. The moment they leave, I put it in. You've seen that? I say, Maulana, can't have it. Hindu, astaghfirullah. Go run away, miles away. What is Islam saying about this? My sister and brother, you are free to eat or not to eat. But at the end of the day, there is a difference between understanding the ruling or taking precaution or going and telling people your own interpretation of religion. Please understand these three. Yes? What do you mean? I sent it to the mu'mineen in Leicester in the Majlis. Afterwards, when I finished, there was a line, a queue. You get that? A queue of being mu'mineen. What is this? 40 years I've thrown the samosa away. You say to me, I am okay? Yes. His Eminence Ayatollah Sistani. Majority of the Marajah, they say it's okay to eat. Huh? How? First time I hear. They said you don't need to ask whether they use their wet hands. You don't need to investigate. You don't need to do anything. If it's vegetarian, vegetables, or samosa, Bismillah, remember us in dua. In other words, what? In other words, I have misunderstood religion. You say to me, no. But we've always been told, najis this. If you see it in your own eyes. But I know. I had some sisters who came to me and said, no respect, you haven't done samosa in your life. How do you know? Anyway. They said, you haven't done samosa in your life. I said, okay, what do you mean? Said, I know, I have prepared samosa. You have your hands and it has to be wet. There is no way that my Hindu neighbor has done it without preparing it. I said, Islam doesn't say this. What do you mean? Islam says you have to see. All ask them. Okay, then I will ask. No. Maraja say, don't ask. Even to that extent. Yes, don't ask. I have asked this question. When we go to Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury, do I have to mention all those? I don't know. When you go and you see someone at the checkout, I've been asked this question. Maulana, I've seen this person at the checkout. I think they are not Ahlul Kitab. They're touching this bag of peas. What should I do? Why are you making religion so difficult? Who asked you to interpret Islam in such a manner? Yes? Now, there is a beautiful story from the life of 6 holy Imam, Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq sallallahu alayhi wa. Listen to this story in case you have a problem with this. By the way, if somebody doesn't want to eat, no problem, because our Hindu friends, neighbors, they themselves, most of them don't eat food for Muslims. That's fine. But it doesn't mean that if I believe that it's something that I must not be doing, I go and preach it and warn others from doing it. Yes. Similarly, when you go to a Hindu restaurant, the chef is Hindu. Yes. Chef is, for example, do I have to inquire? Do I have to say, you touch it with your white hands? I don't have to. Do I have to inquire if the chef is Hindu? I don't have to. I go and eat vegetarian food, bismillah, no problem. Yes? The 6th holy Imam saw once an individual. He said to me, Rasulullah, I have a question. I said, yes. He says, I was in a room and I had a bowl of milk. Okay? I left the room, then a dog entered into the room and came out, and the mouth of the dog was full of milk. You with me? He said, is the milk najis or not? Imam said, it's not najis. What do you mean? It's not najis. He said, why? He said, did you see the dog eat drink from it? He said, no. He said, but it's obvious. It's dripping. He said, no. As long as you haven't seen, then you say it's tahir. He said, Imam, I have a problem with this. Now, subhanAllah, even the Imams had people who would question them. Don't worry, it existed back in the time. There was no Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, but there were likes of these individuals. Yes? He said, no, I have a problem with accepting this. Okay. After a while, this man was what? Was walking. He had just slaughtered an animal. And so his body was full of blood. And he had a knife. He had a scream outside. He ran out to see what's happening. There was a body of someone who was just being slaughtered, killed, stabbed. He stood there. He said, oh, people gathered around. He said, why did you kill him? He said, no, I didn't kill. I was slaughtering a sheep. They said, look, you have blood and you have a knife. He ran to Imam Sajjad, please help me. Imam says, now you come. Did you see the man slaughter? Let us not make religion more difficult. Now, of course, there are ahkam, there are rulings we follow. We follow maraji', follow ulama. But there are influences of culture sometimes, influences of what we heard. Well, I heard where? Where did you hear? Yes, beware of mujtahids who exist in WhatsApp. There are millions who send you narration, who send you fatwa without sources, thinking this is what is correct. Yes, the other way in which the Quran deals with sickness is what? Through mentioning it in regards to prophets. Let me engage the audience. Let me ask you, which prophets in the Quran are mentioned to have been sick? Any ideas? Ahsan, Prophet Ayyub. We all know the story of Prophet Ayyub, yes? Examined, tested for his patience. He lost his wealth, he lost his family, and he lost his health. No doubt, yes? But his condition wasn't that which deterred people. No doubt. That's one. Which other prophets went through sickness in the Quran? Any ideas? Our own prophet where? At the end. When? At the end? Before he passed. Yes, but is it mentioned in the Quran? No. I'm saying specifically in the Quran. Yes, in Hadith, no doubt. In Quran, there are at least 2 other prophets who are sick. See, this is where we need to study prophet. Wallah, people say to me, I'm more concerned about the lives of the Imams. I said, brilliant. But you will never understand the movement of the Imams unless you study the lives of the prophets. These prophets in the Quran, 25 of them mentioned by name, and many others. Have we examined their lives? Have we scrutinized, understood the Quranic perception of what these individuals did? If you want to understand the movement of Sayyid al-Shuhada, know that he is the inheritor of the prophets. Yes. Therefore, which other prophet is mentioned? Prophet Yaqub. Prophet Yaqub has a sickness. He lost his eyes. Yes, he became blind. Which other prophet? Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. Prophet Yunus, what happened to him when he was inside the belly of the whale? Some narrations say it was 9 hours, some say 3 days. When he was eventually out of the belly of the whale, Quran says, فَنَبَذْنَاهُ فِي الْيَمِّ وَهُوَ سَقِيمٌ. He came out and he was what? He was an individual who had what? A severe skill illness, according to riwayat. But the Quran says saqim, he was ill. Because now, the first time, after a few hours or a few days, there was sun rays onto his skin. Therefore, his skin reacted. Yes, that's number one. Number two, What does the Quran say regarding illness generally? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 22, verse 11, وَإِذَا مَرِضْتُ فَهُوَ يَشْفِينِ. When I am sick, it is only He who grants us shifa. What do we mean? Today, God forbid, if you've been to hospital and the doctor tells you I have bad news, you've been diagnosed with this condition. What's the first thing that you do usually? You call your family members. You come home and you Google it. Yes? You want to find out what is this condition? You call a doctor that you know. Is this serious? Am I able to survive? What is the best medication to do? Don't you? You explore, you begin to worry, you begin to think, what happens? My life, how is it going to impact? Right at the end, oh, I just remembered, Ya Allah, please help me. Right at the end of the list, yes, is the turning towards Allah Ta'ala, isn't it? And somehow, this notion of what? Understanding and recognizing Allah Ta'ala says, all these means are under my control. If I want to give you shifa, I give you. Turn to me first. Ask me first. وَإِذَا مَرِضْتُ فَهُوَ He only will give me shifa. Musa alayhi salam will teach us an important lesson. Musa alayhi salam, this great prophet of God, one day had a sickness. When he had a sickness, he said, I will not take any medicines because Allah is the one who gives me shifa. So I will wait until Allah cures me. Allah revealed to him, Musa, if you don't take the medicines, I will never cure you. Why? Musa, who created the plants by which they made the medicines? Take it, but rely on me first. Come and ask me, and then. That's why today there are those under the false notion when it comes to COVID-19. There are those who misunderstood it, yes? They come forward and say, you know what, I don't care about all the regulations, about all the guidelines, about vaccine. I don't care. Because, you know, Allah will, yes, we turn to Allah without a shadow of a doubt. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to use our aqid, our marajir, others have said, do vaccine, do this, etc. The recognition, therefore, that comes forward is that shifa is what? In the hands of Allah. Yet, at the same time, the religion comes forward and says there are things that we have to keep into consideration. They are known as adab. Please focus on this because some people will ask the question, if I am sick, what am I supposed to do? How do I approach it? What are my etiquettes when I am a believer who's gone through sickness? What am I supposed to express? Yes, there are recommendations from Quran and Hadith. Number one, please understand, is to express thankfulness. Shukr. Did you hear that properly? Someone will say to me, thankfulness. I have a real stomach disease. I haven't been able to sleep for a few days. I have a severe migraine and headache. I have cancer. And I say to Allah, thank you. Islam tells me to say thank you. Yes. Islam says before you're patient, you must be shakir. You can never be patient unless you're grateful. How? The problem with us is when we lose something, we think that we own it. We think that we're entitled to health. We think, we believe we're under source of false security. Ya Allah, why? Why have you taken my health away? I ask you, the health was given to you by whom? By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, when He takes it away, is it part of a plan? Definitely. Is it part of something He wants to do for us? Definitely. Is He aware of the sickness? Definitely. Has He allowed it to happen? Definitely. So what should I do? I should be grateful. Because if I'm not grateful, I am complaining against Allah's command. What is the opposite of being grateful? Kafir, the Quran says. Either you're grateful or a kafir. Kafir not in the theological sense. It means you're rejecting the ni'mah. This is a ni'mah. This is a hidden blessing. It is a hidden blessing. Without a shadow of a doubt. Because you might say to me, prove to me that sickness is a hidden blessing. I'll give you the example. Listen to this. Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam lost his son. Yes? Yusuf alayhi salam. He became very much distressed about it. But Allah had a plan for Yusuf. He had to be the king. Allah returned Yusuf to Yaqub eventually after many years. Do you agree? Musa, his mother, she lost her son. Allah returned Musa to his mother after how many hours? Few hours. Yes? No. Do you agree? The Holy Prophet of Islam lost at least one son. Some say two sons. Did Allah return back those sons to him or not? We'll say, hold on. Yaqub, he had his son returned to him. Musa was returned to his mother. Why not the Holy Prophet? Allah has a plan for each and every individual. For Yaqub, there was an objective to make Yusuf help Egyptians and Bani Israel as it was established. For Musa, it was to highlight what Allah's majesty and grandeur, that even his worst enemy can't what? Harm his chosen representative. And eventually Musa is nursed and suckled by his own mother. When it comes to the Holy Prophet of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying what? That your progeny will only come through Sayyidatul Nisa Fatima as-Zahra salawatullah. Therefore, my dear sisters and brothers, as a believer, the first requirement when I am going through an illness, I say, Alhamdulillah, we are people of Alhamdulillah, because this is known as a hidden favor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Is doing a number of things to us. Because let me just elaborate on this a bit further. Because some people say, why? Why do we become ill? There are reasons. I'm not going to tell you only that it's a test, because you've heard this so many times. Someone will tell you, please bear it, it's a test. Yes, I'll pass on that point, because we need to look at it in depth. The first is, we'll only experience thankfulness to Allah of health when we go through illness. Do you agree? When I am taken, or whatever I have is taken away from me, that is when I value it. But when I have it, I don't feel it. Uwais al-Qarani, a fantastic, a brilliant individual, was a companion of the commander of the faithful, peace and blessings be upon him. Uwais al-Qarani, you've heard of him? Where is he buried? Anyone know? Uwais al-Qarani, one of those individuals who was martyred with Amir al-Mu'mineen and Saffin, fighting with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sham, where? Halab, no. See, this is where we have to, his grave has been demolished by Daesh with Ammar ibn Yasir. He had a massive shrine, massive, built by the Shia in the 80s. Yes, it was destroyed and bulldozed to the ground. It's in the Syrian city of Raqqa. If we, the followers and the lovers of Uwais and Ammar, don't know, do you expect others to know? And so this is a cause we have to be, what? Campaigning for. Because even though the scum of the earth, these Daesh are gone from that city, it's still not rebuilt for a number of years. Uwais al-Qarani was an outstanding companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He would be an individual. You know, when I researched the life of Uwais for a Majlis, I found that all Muslims, Sunnis and Shia, respect him. Everyone respects him. But there is a question that no one is able to answer from the other schools. Do you know what is that question? Between the sad demise of the Prophet of Islam until the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Uwais is missing. He's in Yemen, doesn't come to Medina, doesn't give bay'ah to any of the Khilafah. Why? Everyone loves him. Why didn't he give bay'ah? The first occurrence of him after the life of the Prophet of Islam is when he comes to Kufa. He gives allegiance to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, my brother, the Holy Prophet said that there will be a man from Yemen who will come, who will intercede for so many people and give bay'ah. Yes. And that is Uwais al-Qarani. You know what happened to Uwais al-Qarani? Uwais al-Qarani was sick. And he had a skin disease. So he came in Masjid al-Kufa, he prayed to Allah. He said, Ya Allah, I want you to remove this disease, but keep some of it. People came to him and said, you are insane. Why asking Allah to keep some of your disease on your skin? Either all or nothing. He said, don't worry. Later, when he was cured, Allah answered his dua. In his hand, some narrations say, there were still lesions. And it stayed until he was martyred in Safi. They came to him and said, Uwais, explain. What is this? Allah has answered your dua. He said, because every time I look into my hands, I remember the ni'mah of Allah, which is health. So, the first objective why we get sick and why we have to be thankful is because only in sickness do we value health. Number one. Number two, of the etiquettes of somebody who's sick is what? Is not to complain. Please understand this. This is where we differ from people from other religions. In Islamic teachings, we are told complaining to others about your illness is not befitting of a believer. What do we mean? The sixth Holy Imam, Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa sallam, famously states that if somebody asks you about your illness, you can tell them what the illness is. But if you go on to say, I can't believe I have it, why is it that only me is affected? Why others aren't getting it? That is shakwa. That is not befitting. That shouldn't happen. Meaning what? Meaning I can ask people to pray for me, no doubt. I can tell people my condition, no doubt. But complaining about what I'm going through is not one of the adab of the teachings of the religion of Islam. Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Mawla al-Muttaqeen, in a famous narration says, if a believer hides their illness for 3 days, كَانَ حَقًّا عَلَى اللَّهِ أَنْ يُشْفِيهِ. It is Allah who will make it obligatory upon him to give them shifa. For 3 days, if they keep it quiet, they don't divulge. Yes, if you need dua, no problem. Divulging here means wanting sympathy, wanting attention. Yes, somehow feeling sorry for yourself because you're going through illness. Number 2, the third adab of someone who is sick is sadaqah. Dawu mardakum bis sadaqah. Give sadaqah. Yes, because sadaqah is a great source of gaining shifa. Number 4 of great importance is this. Yes, we have to be shakir, but we have to be sabr. Yes, we have to be patient, because no doubt patience will bring about the best in us, isn't it? I remember reading this great scholar, Sahib al-Jawahir, Allama Muhammad Hussein Najafi. Today his books are taught in the house, a great scholar of ours. He writes in this book of fiqh, he says, as I am writing this, my son who's been ill for a while, and I'm sitting next to him, has just died. Inshallah, tomorrow morning we will bury him. Ajib. He's writing next to his son who's just died and he's continuing writing. This is the pinnacle of sabr, isn't it? Allah says, Allah, inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Everything's from Allah and everything returns back to him. And the 5th and 5 important recommendations and etiquettes of someone who's sick is not to forget the fact of what? Asking Allah and trusting Allah and having good impression of Allah. Husnul dhanni billah. Dua. How many times we recite that now beautifully before this majlis? Amma yujib al-mukhtar. What does that mean? You know, sometimes in our lives we say things and we have no idea what they mean. And it's habitual and it's repeated. Amma yujib al-mukhtar means what? It means one of the important prerequisites for the acceptance of the dua, especially if someone is sick, is when you're desperate. Mukhtar means when somebody is desperate. So dua means at the time of sickness and illness to say, Ya Allah, I am desperate. I have no one except you. And if it is good for me, give me shifa. If it is good for me, give me what is best for me. Yes. That's what number 5. The 6th tip of someone who is sick and their adab is to allow others to visit you. And of course, here there is an exclusion. Not if you're suffering with COVID. Yes? Or any infectious disease. What do we mean? The narrations tell us, I ask you this question. When you go and visit someone who is sick in hospital, who's just done an operation, what do they often tell you to do for them? What do they tell you? What is the one thing that often the sick people ask you to do for them? Pray for them. You agree? A hadith of the Ahl al-Bayt say it should be the other way around. I tell you, subhanallah. Do you know what the hadith say? Say when you go to see a sick person, ask them to pray for you because their dua is answered by Allah. Ajib. You say to me, how? You say, yes, pray for them. But also, what? Ask them to pray for you. Because one of those whose dua is answered is a sick person. Yes. Now we will come to see. After looking at these 6 etiquettes, what does Islam say about the benefits of being ill? Please understand this as we wrap up this subject, because the objective to this afternoon is for us to have a different vision, different worldview, different mindset next time we're sick. People are complaining, people have had enough of sickness. Islam says, hold on, take a step back, take a chill pill. It's not as you think it is. Yes, let's look at a few benefits of being ill. Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says when an individual is going through sickness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive their sins, just like how the leaves fall from a tree. And another narration, it says, just like how a metal is cleansed from impurities when you place it in fire. So it's a means of ghufran al-dhunub, the forgiveness of sins, just by being sick. That's it. The machine is working. The forgiveness is happening just by being sick. SubhanAllah. In another narration, this is very widely reported, yes, established narration. The Messenger of God says, if a believer who goes through sickness knew the extent of God's mercy upon them when they're ill, they would have asked Allah to remain sick all their lives. How many of us have asked, Ya Allah, this cough of mine, please keep it all my life? SubhanAllah. These are the rewards, yes? Now, somebody comes and says what? He says that, you know what? I am not able to do many of things that I wish to do when I am sick. So how do you solve this? The seventh Imam, Musa ibn Ja'far, Babu al-Hawa'id, salawatullahi wa salam alayhi, gives us the answer for this. Do you know what he says? He says, when an individual is sick, Allah reveals to the angel that are sitting on their cheeks. In our narrations, the right and left angel are not sitting on our shoulders. They're sitting on our cheeks here. So after Salah, the Shia, the followers of Al-Hilli, they do this. Salaam Alaykum wa rahmatullah, not this. Yes? You look at them here. They are here. So the narration says what? The narration says that Allah reveals to the angel sitting on the left and says, do not write for them any sins whilst they are sick. Don't write any sins. Just from me. This doesn't mean you go and do haram on yourself. Some have said, I heard this revelation, straight to Netflix, haram movies. This means that if you're sick, you know, and then you say something, or as a result of sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is encapsulated. But more importantly, the riwayah says from the seventh Imam, Allah reveals to the angel sitting on the right, give them the thawab of whatever they want to do if they're healthy. So, what this means is, you're saying to me, if I was healthy, Maulana, I would go and read Quran, I would recite namaz al-Sheikh, I would go for ziyarah. Allah will give you the thawab of all this without you doing it. Just have the intention. And Allah knows if you're sincere or not. Yes? The recognition, therefore, that emerges is what? Is that sickness within the religion of Islam is a journey, is a what? Is an important part of our lives. Here we conclude. And that is why. Can't Allah have made us all healthy all the time? Why? Why do we have to go through sickness? We said the first is to appreciate health. Second, very importantly, it's as a result of our sins. We are being punished sometimes in this world before Akhirah. Is this good? Definitely. It is better that we are punished here than we are punished in Barzakh and Akhirah. Why? Because the punishment in the afterlife is much more severe than now. Therefore, if I'm going through sickness now as a result of my sins and shortcomings and transgression, it's an act of mercy by the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that I am not being punished later. That's number two. Number three, sometimes it's a cause and effect. Not only sins, sometimes things that we have done, things that we are not doing. We recite in dua, وَلَعَنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِعَتْ بِذَلِكَ فَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ. We hear of what's happening around the world. Oppression, Yemen, Palestine, Syria, Iran. We hear Afghanistan. We hear and we do nothing about it. We just sit. Oh, I'm sorry to hear. We get sick as a result. Yes. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Yes. You are, for example, neglecting some of your duties, enjoining the good and forbidding evil. No doubt. Cause and effect. Sometimes this sickness happens in this world. The fourth area, very important why sickness happens, please understand this, is because the Prophet Islam, peace and blessings upon him and his family, says there are three things that humble a human being. Al-faqr wal-marad wal-maut. Poverty, sickness and death. These things are a cause of humility. If we're not ill, even the most arrogant individual, when they go through poverty, or when they go through illness, or when they die, who can help them? There's no cure sometimes for certain conditions. There's no way to stop. Today, if somebody gets COVID, is there a way to somehow cure them immediately? No. They have to isolate, 7 to 10 days, and so on. Yes? Therefore, the recognition that emerges is this, And the other reason why we get sickness is the hadith says, إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ عَبْدًا ابْتَلَاهُ. When Allah loves an individual, He will make them go through more hardship. It is to raise our status. It is to make us better. It is to gain a higher position in Jannah. The riwayah says there are those who are patient because of sickness and other reasons in Jannah. They're given a state. They say to the malaika, why aren't we on a higher state? They say, because Allah made you go through hardship and you are patient. And He knew that that's the extent of your patience. You cannot deal with anymore. That is all that you can deal with. That's your status. Yes. Therefore, in order to raise us, otherwise I tell you, if there was no sickness and no hardship in this world, it will only be what? Based on your prayers, your acts of wajibat, and that's it. Staying away from haram. And then how would we excel more than others? This is one way for us human beings to attain more merit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without a shadow of a doubt. And that is why, my dear sisters and brothers, it is of the utmost importance to recognize that when it comes to Imam Zayn al-Abideen al-Sajjad, salawatullahi wa sallam, he teaches us in this dua. Please check out this dua 15 of Sahih al-Sajjadiyya. Those of us who every year remember the fourth Imam, but may have never read treaties of rights, may have never recited Sahih al-Sajjadiyya. It's available in English. Go to du'as.org, yes, and recite some du'as from Sahih al-Sajjadiyya honoring the fourth Holy Imam. Do you know what the Holy Fourth Imam says in the dua of illness? What is it that you would first ask Allah when you're sick? When you're sick, what do you ask Allah? Give me shifa. Imam Zayn al-Abideen says no. The first half of the dua, Imam says, Ya Allah, I don't know how to start to be thankful to you because of the illness. And I don't know whether I should be more thankful for you when I am healthy or when I am sick. This is what the Imam is teaching you and I. These are the valuable lessons of the great individual. Wallah, I have this challenge and I am prepared for anyone. And this challenge from our ulama, give me a group of people like these holy individuals, the family of the Holy Prophet, that have produced gems of du'as and supplications and teachings like Ali Muhammad. Give me another group and I'll follow them. There is no one after the Prophet of Islam who excelled to this level like these holy individuals. Look at the nature and the deep, the depth, the profoundness of the supplications of the Imam alayhi salam. Therefore, what is it that we need to do? Number one, I need to have tawakkul on Allah when I'm sick. Number two, I need to trust Him because He has a plan for me. Number three, I need to also surrender to Him. Number four, I need to be pleased with Him. Rida. And number five, I need to submit to Him. Taslim. These are the lessons that's given to us from our Holy Fourth Imam. Blessed be upon Him. Yes. Because he never said a word when it comes to sickness. Do you think it's easy for Imam Zayn al-Abideen to be in that state on the 10th of Muharram? We sometimes forget how hard it must have been for him. It's not just that your father is asking for help. It's not only you see your own brothers and your uncles and your family members being slaughtered, but you hear the cries of the children and al-Atash al-Atash. How difficult must it be for Imam Zayn al-Abideen not to be able to rise and fight, but he never complained, because this is part of Allah's plan. He recognized that he had to stay alive in order to keep the message of Ashura alive. In every occasion, in every opportunity for him to remind people of the Masa'ib of Karbala, he would do so. He would tell people of the tragedy of the 10th of Muharram in so many different places. If he sees an animal being slaughtered, he would say to the person, have you fed that animal water? They say, Ya Rasulullah, how do we slaughter an animal and not quench their thirst? Imam alayhi salam would then shed a tear. He would cry. And I would say to him, Ya Rasulullah, what makes you cry? He said, but my father was slaughtered first. Dubiha atshan. He sees a body of a man who's about to be buried. He says to that individual who's about to bury this body, how long has this man died? He said, only a few hours. When are you going to bury him? He said, now. Then Imam begins to cry. I said to him, why are you crying? He said, the body of my father was left on the plains of Karbala for 3 days without kafan and without shroud and without ghusl, torn into pieces. I ask you, the masa'ib that Imam Zayn al-Abideen had to bear, the calamities that he had to witness, in addition to him going through sickness, they break any person, but they never broke Imam Zayn al-Abideen. Do you know, on the day of Ashura, he's on his deathbed, he's on his bed, and he's sick, and he hears something which intrigues him, which makes him worried. He looks at his Auntie Zaynab, he says, Auntie Zaynab, I hear something breaking. It is like a glass being shattered. What is this breaking sound? Allahu Akbar. Imam Zayn al-Abideen is in his tent. He hears something being broken. Sayyida Zaynab, Allahu Akbar, al-Masa'ib. She looks at her nephew. She says, Zayn al-Abideen, this is the bones of your father being broken. Under the hooves of the horses. They're smashing the chest of your father. Zayn. The horses have now been trampling on the body of your father. Ya Zayn al-Abideen. Ya Aba Abdullah. These are some of the masa'ib. You know, Imam Zayn al-Abideen had to come back and bury the body of his father. This is amongst the list of the calamities that he had to see. He then went back to tell the family of Ali Muhammad. Each and every one of them would hold his Abba. They would say, uncle, tell me, how did you find the body of my father? How did you find the body of my uncle? Then when he finished telling them, there was a lady standing there, her head down. He walks towards her. It is his own auntie, his own Auntie Zaynab. She raises her head. She says, my nephew, how did you find the body of my Abbas? What about Aba Abdullah? He says the body of Hussein was like no other body. His body was covered. Every single part of his body was torn into pieces. There were arrows all over his body. It was like a hedgehog. They said, how did you identify? There are no heads on the body of Hussein. He said there was no other body on the plains of Karbala like the body of my father Hussein. They said, how did you bury him? He said, when I came to pick up his body, I looked at Bani Asad and I said, please give me a piece of cloth. They said, what do you want the piece of cloth for? He said, every time I pick up the body, one part of it falls. I need a piece of cloth to gather the body parts of my father. Somebody asked him, Zayn al-Abideen, Sayyid al-Sajideen, you saw so many masa'ib, yes? What was one of the most painful? He said, Asham, Asham. They said, Imam, this is in Bihar. What did you see in Sham? He said, in Sham, we were taken on unsaddled camels. When we were being taken in this bazaar, everyone looking at us, the moment we began to cry, remembering Musibah of Karbala, Imam Zayn al-Abideen says, we were pelted with stones, we were hit with arrows, we were poked with spears. That moment, he said, we were taken towards the dungeon. This dungeon was not underground, he said. This dungeon was in a place that was exposed, where the children of Rasulullah would run from one corner to the other, crying out the heat of the sun. We would burn under the rays of the sun. Why Asham, Asham? Imam Zayn al-Abideen, what happened in Sham for you to say it was so painful? Yes. One of the companions of the Holy Prophet said, I saw him being on this unsaddled camel being pushed. I went to him, I said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, I can't do much to help you, but please tell me, is there anything I could do? He said, yes. He said, what do you want me to do? He said, you have a piece of cloth. He said, why? He said, Wallah, the chains are digging into my flesh. He said, why? He said, I want a piece of cloth so that I place it between the chains on my neck. That is why Musibah after Musibah, yes? But Imam alayhi salam would recall the 10th of Muharram, would recall what happened on that day even in his last moments. The narration says that he was what? In his deathbed. The poison had spread on the body of Imam Zayn al-Abideen. Today our hearts and our minds go towards Jannatul Baqi', because we hold this majlis here. We shed the tear for Imam Sajjad. There are majalis taking place over the last few days in Karbala and Najaf. There are majalis in Mashhad and Qum. There are majalis in the Western world. But wallah, there is no majlis in Jannatul Baqi'. Imam is all alone with Imam al-Hassan, with Imam al-Sadiq, with Imam al-Baqir. Their graves, demolished graves. There is no shrines. There are no zuwar. There are no ma'tams. There are no majalis in Jannatul Baqi'. Your hearts are with Imam Sajjad in Jannatul Baqi'. Yes, in his final moments. Imam al-Baqir says, I was nursing my father. I was next to him. I was providing him with whatever he wants. All of a sudden, I saw my father, Zayn al-Abideen, cry. His eyes filled with tears. I became what? I became grieved. I came next to him. I said, my dear father, what is it that makes you sad? Why is it that you are grieving? He said, my father looked at me. He said, my son Muhammed, you are next to me. You're providing me with what I want. You are comforting me in my final moments. But my father Hussein was alone on the plains of Karbala. He was ghareeb. Every enemy had surrounded him. There was no friend next to him. We could not get next to him. My father was stabbed. My father was pelted. My father's body was not left alone. He said, Imam al-Baqir, he said, when I heard Imam, my father, mention the musibah of Abu Abdullah, I became tearful. I began to remember what happened. Imam al-Baqir was there on the day of Ashura. He was 3 years of age. He said, I hugged my father. I placed my hands on the chest of my father, Zayn al-Abideen. I began to place my head on the chest of my father, Zayn al-Abideen. He said, when I did this, my father began to cry even more. His tears intensified. I then looked at him. I said, Father, is everything okay? He says, my son Muhammed, Ajarakum Allah, Ya Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. He says, my son Muhammad, you placed your hand on my chest. And I remember you placed his knees on the chest of my father, Abu Abdullah. I remember you sat on the chest of my father, Abu Abdullah. I remembered you stabbed my father 12 times. I remembered you held the neck of my father. I remembered you took out the nail from the neck.
وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. With these tears, with this remembrance, with this Majlis Azar, each and every tear, each and every remembrance of Ahl al-Bayt has value. May Allah bless the organizers of the Al-Muntazir network and all mu'mineen and mu'minat taking part in the remembrance of the Ahl al-Bayt. Do not underestimate the power and the value of these majalis. The malaika are with you. The malaika are remembering the Masa'ib of Hussein and Zayn al-Abideen. Du'as are answered. Raise your hands and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the shifa for all mu'mineen and mu'minat. All those who are suffering with conditions, with ailments. Ya Rabb al-Alameen, bihaqqi mareed Karbala, Zayn al-Abideen, fulfill their wishes, Ya Allah, and grant them shifa, Ya Rabb al-Alameen. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to see the day in which the graves of Imams of Baqi' are rebuilt into shrines once again. Ya Allah, allow us to hold majalis next to the shrine of Imam Zayn al-Abideen. Allow us to visit the shrines of the Ahl al-Bayt, especially Amir al-Mu'mineen and Najaf, Sayyid al-Shuhada in Karbala. Ya Allah, accept the a'mal and the hard work of the mu'mineen and mu'minat who established this majlis. Ya Allah, hasten the appearance of our 12th Imam.
and make us of his devout and sincere followers. Ma'tana Hussein. Ya Hussein.
صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان آخری فجر ہے یہ اس مؤذن کے لیے پھر یہ آواز کہاں صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان صبح عاشورا مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان دشت میں پیاسے مؤذن نے جو تکبیر کہی آ گئی اپنے مصلی پہ علی کی بیٹی یاد پھر آئی اسے اپنے پاپا کی اذان چوکری اور کی ماں صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان ابھی کچھ دیر سلامت ہے حرم کا فرجا شام کے وقت جب آئے گی اذانوں کی صدا جام جانے کے لیے سر جھکانے کے لیے ہر چادر ہوگی کہاں صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر نام آیا جو محمد کا طلوع مولا ان للہ پڑا اور یہ غازی سے کہا اس کو ماریں گے سنا یہ مسلمان بھلا رہ پائیں گے کہاں صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان صبح عاشورا ہوئی مان رو کے سنی علی اکبر کی اذان آئے جب نام علی اٹھ کے یہ مولا نے کہا میں فدا آپ پہ بابا میری اولاد فدا تیر اصغر کا گر سینہ مجھ پہ خنجر ہو روان شبھ
یا حسین 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 ماں کربلا دیا 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 پترا دیا لاشا دے ٹکڑے ریا دیا بچ سہرا ماں کربلا دیا ماں کربلا دیا صبر دے مالک نو سڑ گیا کے اذن جے دے میں صبر دی ساچ پیچھے اکبر دے سینے چو سانگ ہٹاوا کربلا دیا کربلا دیا آنکھیں ماں قاسم دی ماتے احسان کری تیرے تیرڑ ربی تیرے ٹھکرے مطابق پتھریاں دے میرے پیر حسین کی کربلا دیا کربلا دیا کربلا دیا دو قیدی ہوں گے ننگیاں مقتل چوں غیر زینب کی لاشا ولما وارا بیکن کتے رک نہ جاون ساوا کربلا دیا کربلا دیا کربلا دیا رو کے ہر مائے ہو کہندی رہی شامیاں نو اب درے مارو پس دے دو اجازت پچھ صحرا میں پتر کی خبر بناواں کربلا دیا کربلا دیا شمر دے خنجر دے بار زارا روکے نال سین کبے میں چکیا پیس کے ہائے بار اسی کہ میں ہاتھ کر دے تو جاوا کربلا دیا کربلا دیا کربلا دیا 14 صدیاں روئیاں فاطمہ دی روحاں اللہ جل پڑھ دیا
سمرین اجیبی تک دیا نے او مہدی پتر تیرا کربلا دیا ماما کربلا دیا ماما کربلا دیا ماما. 2 سے 3 شعر بی بی سکینہ کے حوالے سے پڑھوں گا، اس کے بعد 9 کی طرف پڑھیں گے. اے باد صبا جا کے ہم کو بتانا پیاسی ہے سکینہ پیاسی ہے سکینہ اس چھوٹے سے سینے یہ ستم کیسے اٹھائے اللہ کسی کو نہ یتیم ایسا بنائے خود اپنے لہو میں کوئی بچی نہ نہائے میں تم کو بلاتی رہی تم بھی تو نہ آئے میں بن گئی تاش لینوں کا نشانہ پیاسی ہے سکینہ پیاسی ہے سکینہ کہ پانی کی طلب مجھ کو کھلاتی رہی ٹھوکر کہتا تھا نہیں دوں گا میں فوجوں کو پلا کر جب شمر لگی کر چکا صحرا بھی لشکر دکھلا کے مجھے پھینک دیا پانی زمین پر تب سمجھی ہوں کیا ہوتا ہے امید دلانا پیاسی ہے سکینہ پیاسی ہے سکینہ ایک جام ہوا شام غریبا میں میسر وہ کوزہ میں رکھ لائی تھی اصغر کی لحد پر تھا مجھ سے بھی چھوٹا میرا بھیا میرا دل پر شرمندہ میں ہو جاتی چچا پیاس بجھا کے اب اپنے ہی ہاتھوں سے میری پیاس بجھانا پیاسی ہے سکینہ پیاسی ہے سکینہ کرم یہ مجلس شبیر نے کیا ورنہ کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں خبر ہے بنت رسول خدا کے آنے کی بدل رہی ہے ہوائیں غریب خانے کی بدل رہی ہے ہوائیں غریب خانے کی میرا نصیب کے مہمان ہوئی میری زہرا کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں فرشتے شاہ گدا کر سبھی ہے پیش نظر ہے انبیاء کی قطاریں لگی میرے گھر پر ہے انبیاء کی قطاریں لگی میرے گھر پر تمہاری آنے سے بیوی یہ مرتبہ پایا کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں جنوں ہماری سوچو سلام اور ماتم ہمارے عرش کی ہے بی بی کے زخم کا مرہم ہمارے عرش کی ہے بی بی کے زخم کا مرہم اگر نہ ہو کہ وسیلہ یہ ماتم نوحہ کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں غریب خانے کو جنت بنا دیا بی بی خوشی یہ ایسی ہے جس نے رلا دیا بی بی خوشی یہ ایسی ہے جس نے رلا دیا بی بی ہر ایک اشک نے آنکھوں سے گرتے گرتے کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں کہاں غریب کا گھر اور کہاں حسین کی ماں یا حسین 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 وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا جنگ سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی سینے پہ جو شاہ پلی سینے پہ جو شاہ پلی کی عبا بن میں چلی
जिसकी हवा बन में चली मुँह पर कहाँ जो के निशान मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन असगरे बेशीर था वो असगरे बेशीर था और हुरमला का तीर था और हुरमला का तीर था प्यासा गला क्यों कर चला प्यासा गला क्यों कर चिदा रोई ज़मीन और आसमां मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन मौला हक इमाम या हसन या हुसैन 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 और मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सलवात.
We'll now have the recitation of Ziyad Ashura. So the Qibla is behind you, so 11 o'clock. Behind you, slightly to the left. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdillah. Assalamu عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد المرسلين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت عظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت. ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتب الله فيها. ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم يا أبا عبد الله. إني سر لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة ولعن الله ابن مرجان ولعن الله عمر بن سعد ولعن الله شرا ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وأنجمت وتنقبت بقتال
بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منسوب من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم وابرؤوا إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وتقربوا إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحق وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبتني عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني طلب الثار مع إمام الهدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا من مصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. الله بركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم ولعن منك الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالمين ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد آخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا ثم لعن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا وهجرهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
لبيك يا حسين لبيك يا حسين لبيك يا حسين لبيك يا حسين لبيك يا حسين.
So as you can see, so in the Jen side there is the black flag on the wall. That's from the dome of Imam Hussein. And this red one here, the ladies, maybe from where you're standing, please perform the ziyarah of this flag, which was gifted by the office of the Holy Shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this, of course, as you know, you will have seen in all of the photos and videos, it's placed on top of the holy golden dome of Imam Hussein. And we have riwayat that say that any dua that you make underneath the dome of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is accepted. Of course, due to circumstances, we can't be in Karbala right now, but this is literally, and I say this with a lot of almost fear and emotion in my voice, this is the closest that we can get to the holy Rosa of Imam Hussein alayhi salam without actually being there. So please make your dua. Please remember all of those that are suffering around the world. Please pray for their shafa, inshallah. Especially our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan that are going through things that we can't even imagine. Let's remember everyone in our community, young and old, all of our parents, our deceased family members as well. Please remember all of the volunteers of Al-Muntazir network who have put in a lot of time and effort to make today's gathering possible. All of the reciters, the children and the adults that graced us with the ram and the zikr of Al-Hilli today. Please keep us all in your du'as, inshallah. Let's recite 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We'll give it a couple of minutes. We'll turn off the mic and everything. We'll allow everyone to perform your ziyarah to make your du'as, inshallah.